Entering a spiritual calling is an intense experience. I remember well when I gave my life to God in service to Him, just gave it all to Him. And my combined experience of bliss, of awe, of apprehension. What was my life going to be now? And was I going to be up to the task of the spiritual vocation of Christian ministry? My own shame story created a nagging inner sense that I would not be. As a young minister, I participated in a high-profile series of meetings intended to have an impact on the greater Los Angeles area. The evangelist was highly skilled, and I watched him with interest. Someone else was watching him too, HMS Richards, a highly respected evangelist himself, now retired and elderly. At one meeting, I happened to see Pastor Richards in the lobby of the auditorium, and he smiled at me and engaged me in a personal conversation. He talked with me about various approaches to evangelism and spoke appreciatively about the present evangelist. And as he did so, he just leaned back informally against the wall of the lobby and asked me what I was learning. There was something about his warm, personable way with me, his looking at me with friendly eyes, that made me feel relaxed and at home with him. Afterward, I couldn't help saying to myself, wow, that was HMS Richards. Even all these years later, I recall his welcoming smile toward me in that brief encounter. The story of my life, whether fear or rage or loneliness or shame, propels my life through all my present moments, even through my spiritual service to God. How I even see God is colored by the lens of my personal story. But then Christian faith creates the possibility that I can be restored, and so renew how I can see God and even you. Internalizing God's story that I receive through His Word is transforming. But how I explore a new story in my moments of connection with you is an indispensable part of that transformation. It seems that Jesus often used moments of informal connection when He was leaning casually against a wall, so to speak, to change people's stories. And when He would see people and they could see that they were being seen, they were restored. Zacchaeus was, and the Samaritan woman at the well, and Nicodemus, and Peter. Remember Peter? Luke, in his account of the events of that long night before the crucifixion of Jesus, and with Peter's denials, Luke tells the story. The Lord turned and looked at Peter. I see the Lord seeing me, and my own story is changed. When Jesus said, "You did not choose me," remember? "I chose you and put you in the world to bear fruit that won't spoil." He was telling me how He sees me. In the same way, He said, "I've called you friends." I can no longer see myself in the same way. Jesus showed us His transforming gaze upon us. And He also showed us the possibilities from our transforming gaze upon one another. It was after Jesus was gone from His physical life on this earth that new communities started springing up all over the Roman world. These gathered groups of Christ followers were called the church. And the Apostle Paul had a prime role in bringing them to life and sustaining them. We're fortunate to have some of these stories and his correspondence with these churches. And it's clear that Paul maintained mutually transforming relationships with these young Christians. You can see in his writing to the Galatians, for example, how he was humble and tender with them, even though they were having a sharp disagreement. He acknowledged that he had had physical problems when he was with them and expressed gratitude for their compassion. He wrote to them, You did not scorn or despise me, but welcomed me as an angel of God, as Christ Jesus. He could see them seeing him with honor and deep love, and it was healing. And it has been this spirit established within the Church of Jesus Christ as the essence of who we are and who we are becoming. Humble, without affectation, generous with one another, affirming and loving from that place of love within each of us that Jesus himself has awakened by calling us friends. And so in this special community called the church, I see Jesus seeing me. And in his love, I see you, and I see you seeing me. And so with you and you and you, I begin by receiving deep within me his new story. And then I begin to live that story and become that story with you. As Paul did when I participate in a story in which I'm humble and confessional. I'm in the wrong sometimes, and genuine and truthful about my entire life's experience. I grow into a story of my life that releases shame, that conquers fear, that drains away anger, that moves me beyond narcissistic self-preoccupation. Psychologist Donald Winnicott describes how early in life I'm likely to develop a false self that is constructed to meet the expectations of those who love me and the expectations of my social environment, but can leave me feeling dead and empty and fake. I end up living a pretend story that covers for a painful story that is actually the truth. In contrast, the true self, when it is nurtured, is spontaneous, authentic, and filled with the immediate experience of life, including moments shared in honesty with others. Even more than this, Paul describes in his writings the new self that Christ creates within me, and which I begin to live authentically with you. You become part of my new story, and you actually co-create it with me. And as Jesus sees me and calls me his friend, I see you, and I see you seeing me. And together, we actually live as his friends. Our new story.